to jump onto peptides, do you think that they are also, I guess, the kind of like muscle building GLP-1s that people are looking for? Is that how they're seeing it? Because that's kind of what I see. Like, there's a few people asking, oh, what are they? Should I be trying them? Are they like steroids? Are they not? Are they safe? Because I got a DM the other day asking to like what my rates were to do a sponsored post for them. You know what I mean? And I've seen personal trainers put biohacker and longevity in their bio and then push a peptide. So obviously there's money to be made. There's this quick fix kind of scammy element. So I have a bad feeling in my gut, but I'm sure in some ways there is some efficacy toward them. So like, is that how they're kind of being seen at the moment? Like the GLP-1s for muscle building, or are they different?
Yeah, this is one where you can get people talking across each other. Like, we recently made a post advertising our issue of Mass. So Mass Research Review is where we do a monthly review of hot topics in the fitness industry from an evidence-based perspective. And we kind of had an assumption that people knew what we were talking about when we were talking about some of these unregulated, novel, no human research or extremely limited human research peptide drugs. And we said, hey man, this is a huge scientific overreach. There's no human research. And we posted about it, and we had people going like, GLP-1s have been great for me and insulin's great. Like, I think a lot of people are talking about different things when they talk about peptide drugs. So peptide drugs is really just kind of a broad classification of drugs that spans things that have been in existence for decades. It spans things that are really well researched and have gone all the way through stage 1, 2, and 3 clinical trials, and things that were wholly abandoned because of dangerous research, but were never scheduled or fully picked up and can be accessed as quote-unquote research-only chemicals for personal use, that are now being marketed by quote-unquote wellness clinics as kind of acting as a gray zone middleman, especially in certain regions, depending upon the regulatory nature. So, we made that mistake, and we created this shitstorm online of misunderstanding. And I got thrown under the bus, and I did a lot of apologizing and clarifying. And then we made the article free, and everyone's like, oh, But the funny thing is, even when we put much more specifics out there, people were very strongly in certain camps against the idea that there could be any harm here, and it wasn't just a positive, and that we can't trust the medical establishment. This is just like how steroids used to be, saying they didn't work for athletes. So there's this weird cross-pollination between, in my experience as someone who's in the bodybuilding scene, what has historically been kind of the niche underground, like steroid and ancillary performance enhancing and image enhancing drug world, with what has now become commonplace. And the reason is that these drugs, the GLP-1 drugs, work. And they've kind of normalized getting, a weekly shot in the arm, because we're just now developing effective oral ones, right? That may change, but right now it is pretty normal to go, hey, I want to lose weight or change my body, and I can just get a script and then I get a shot in my arm. And when there was, and this is more of a US thing, when there was a massive shortage, there was something called compounding pharmacies, which are these pharmacies that can get access to the drugs in different means and potentially sell you GLP-1s when there's a shortage and do things semi-off-label. So it's kind of normalized this idea of taking hold of your own use of injectable drugs that modify your body composition and make that kind of all good. And the reality is that while absolutely peptide drugs are fantastic if we're talking about I'm a type 1 diabetic and I need to use insulin, or certain peptides that have been fully researched, gone through clinical trials, are approved, and you get them through your insurance and use them for specific causes. But some of the most popular ones in kind of the wellness space, like I think BP157, that everyone swears by being this amazing healing drug that will accelerate tissue repair and recovery, there is only animal data on that's actual like outcome data, like RCTs. And the human trials were, hey, we asked some people a year later when they took this peptide. Do you think it helped your recovery? And then we have this case study of like 2 people, and they were like, yeah, it was great, you know? So no actual, yeah, like a phone call, right? Yeah. So it's published anecdote, which is fine, and anecdotal information is useful. But here's the thing. It's like when we do placebo-controlled trials, there's a reason for that. Expectation is really big, and not just like the magic of placebo. Like the reason why if I do a blood pressure trial and I'm a pharmaceutical company and I want to have a placebo-controlled trial is imagine you go and you find out you have high blood pressure, and then you find out there's a clinical trial you can participate in. You're concerned about it, so you choose, like, I would love to be in this trial, I would love to get my blood pressure lowered, and you don't know if you're going to get assigned to the placebo or the actual drug. You're not just going to maintain your lifestyle and then start taking a pill. You're going to probably start to be more active, try to eat less saturated fat, and do things to actively lower your blood pressure, cholesterol, and modify in a positive way your overall heart risk. So independent of whether or not you're in the clinical trial and taking the pill, placebo, or blood pressure, we need to know, controlling for those lifestyle behaviors that you're modifying and the expectancy effect as well, is this drug having an additional impact? And when you get injured, you don't stay injured forever. The natural state of the human body is it's trying to recover back to baseline. And when we look at a lot of studies, this is why we've seen this big shift in like the physiotherapy world and pain management, where we're trying to acknowledge the biopsychosocial environment, and we're trying to get a little less focused on purely the biomedical, because there is some data showing that for certain surgeries, not all, or for certain treatments, not all, that like for certain types of lower back pain or hip surgeries, etc., if you don't do surgery, people will kind of get back to baseline. And that surgeries don't provide a higher rate of recovery in some cases, and that there are disconnects between pain and imaging. And if I take 100 people off the street, let's say 20 of them complain of lower back pain, and the other 80 have no sign of back pain. In those 80, there's going to be a lot of people with slipped discs in their lower back who are asymptomatic. And if we just go with the imaging, we might decide to intervene and actually make the thing worse. And in the people who have back pain, it's not actually reliable that they might also have a slipped disc. So there's this disconnect. And I'm not saying they're completely unrelated, but pain management, and intervention is pretty complex. And we want to make sure that we are considering all these factors, because if we just look at a bunch of people who go to a Reddit forum, hear that BP157 is amazing, they have a halo effect because they're related to other peptide drugs which are approved and are very effective, like GLP-1s, and they get someone telling them, hey, I am a legitimate wellness clinic, I am a doctor, which is true, you can come on in here and I can get you these, and it's not technically illegal, but I'm just basically purchasing these for research-only drugs, and then you're buying it as a private person, not using your insurance, so it's kind of legal-ish because the FDA hasn't cracked down on it. It feels legit, right? And it is quote-unquote normalized or legit enough that even people like you or I or any kind of quote-unquote fitness influencer or trainer is finding ways to make this something that they can use as a top-up service, almost like, suggesting supplements. So this very blurry area makes it very difficult to talk in broad strokes about this without getting something wrong like we did in that post. So I think there's a huge difference between experimental drugs that were abandoned by the pharmaceutical industry because they either didn't work, had negative effects, or had safety issues, and actual peptide drugs that have been well researched. And it may be that some of these drugs that have don't have a lot of research behind them will become quite good. But the issue is that there's a handful of them that almost certainly will not, because they actually got abandoned by the pharmaceutical industry because they were not doing what they meant, what they're proposed to do. So, like, for example, and I can't remember them off the top of my head because they have these weird letter number combinations, there was a specific peptide drug that was used to try to control like fat gain, and it resulted in fat gain. And I think it was used in a like a cancer model or something like that. I can't quite remember. And now it's being promoted as just based on the mechanism of this should result in fat loss. And that was a human trial showing this is bad. And then why didn't they keep researching it? It's not because the medical industry wants to control it. They're like, oh, this isn't going to make money. It doesn't work, right? There was another one that did start on phase 1 clinical trials. Somebody had a heart attack and they shut it down, and the pharmaceutical company said, I don't want none of that. Let's explore other options, right? So, and now that is back on the market, right? So, or things that have only been shown to be working in genetically modified mice, right? So it's possible that those specific trials, just got dropped. A company went bankrupt during COVID, never got it picked back up, and there's better options. I'm not saying none of them could get picked back up and researched and result in becoming quite good, but I don't think a lot of them are, and some of them that are very popular do have safety issues. Some of them, you're talking about accelerating growth in certain tissues. How do we know that wouldn't accelerate a benign tumor growth? I'm not saying it will, but we definitely should know that before we start taking unregulated drugs, right? And more so, this is like when we're talking about these pharmaceutical grade drugs that are being put together in shady conditions and sometimes potentially not mixed well or to the same standard that you would want for something putting in your body, but marketed as very similar to GLP-1, there's a quality control issue. So there was data that was done in the UK where they had a bunch of people, and this is where it's legal to use anabolic steroids, it's just illegal to sell it, right? So you come on in, bring your gear, no risk, no legal implications, and we'll test it and tell you what you got. Something like 80% of the anabolic steroids that were brought and lab tested were either not the same drug or they were under or overdosed. So there's a huge issue of people taking illicit drugs that is independent of the actual effect of the drug themselves. This is why I'm relatively hard line on the supplement industry, especially if you're getting it from like the States or other places where it's post hoc regulated. It's like, yeah, even if this is an evidence-based supplement, are you actually getting that? And this is why I'm a huge advocate for third-party testing.